You are now listening to the Lasting Legacy Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Lasting Legacy Podcast. Before we continue, go down, hit subscribe. We're still like 4 away from 100 subscribers, and David is going to give away free singing lessons at 100. So be sure to subscribe and enter. Today we have Jason Neve. He is owner of McMillian Claim Service, and we're going to talk about what he's doing and how he built what he has.
What's going on, Jason? For those who don't know, I'm David, owner of David Took It Photography, Videography, and met Jason a little while back and knew we had to get him on the podcast. So thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. You want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
I'm Jason Neve. I am a proud Pueblo native. Left Pueblo for a few years when I was a teenager, and parents moved us up to Springs. Went to the University of Colorado, where I decided that my girlfriend was a little more important than studying. So with just 42 credits left to get my degree, I decided I would move back to Pueblo and marry this wonderful girl, and it was the best thing I ever did.
Congratulations, man.
Worth 42 credits.
Yeah. Maybe I might one day go back and get those. So I always threaten to do that. Then I wouldn't be looked at, it's like I didn't finish anything.
It's all right. What kind of student were you in high school?
Very mediocre. I was, I just wasn't a very disciplined person, nor have I ever been a real disciplined person. I was always had the brains to do anything I wanted, but it just was not very interesting, and it was slow. Mm-hmm. That's the one word I always associated with high school. Is it was just so slow. Classes were so slow, and it was just like, So I wasn't real into it. I'd take tests and get great grades, and wouldn't do homework, and passed. Yeah.
No, of course.
Same.
Now, did you go to high school in the Springs or?
I went to Doherty High School in Doherty Springs.
Okay, nice, sweet. So then you found little woman of your dreams.
Right before I had a kind of a traumatic experience happen when I was 19 years old. I was kind of doing a lot of bad things, and had a particular incident go real bad, and the very next day I was going to visit my friend at CU, and I had never really thought about going to college. It didn't really appeal to me because I didn't really know what it was. And I went and visited him the next day, and it was amazing. Boulder is just an amazing city. It's beautiful, and there were thousands of beautiful girls. And I went into an accounting class, a freshman accounting class, and it was one of the first times I ever couldn't understand what the professor was explaining. So that was really attractive too. And so I went to class with my friend and went back to his apartment and called my parents and said, I'm going to go to see you. And that's kind of what took me up to see you.
So was it in a finance route? Was that what your degree was going to be in?
I majored in business. I was in the business school. Tourism and recreation was my major. And ironically, I met my girlfriend at the time right before I left to go to CU, and that probably wasn't real good timing because she was in La Junta and I was Boulder, so that little 4-hour commute didn't make my mom real happy.
No, exactly.
But anyway, business school, tourism and recreation major. Part of the reason I left too was I did feel like I was going into a job that I didn't necessarily think was going to be very fun.
Sure.
And fun might not be what you look for in a job, but I didn't like the idea of being in a suit. At the time, I didn't think anything business related was what I wanted to be or do. Again, it shows you how little you know when you're younger, because I use my business law classes a lot. I use my a lot of the things that I learned in college, I use all the time. And at the maybe only 4 or 5 classes though, but still, it was all stuff that was preparing me, whether I knew it or not, for a lot of things that I do now.
No, that's awesome, because our reoccurring kind of subject on the podcast unintentionally is education, and whether it gets you ready to, like if you get a business degree, does it get you ready to own your own business, or does it get you ready to work for somebody else? So it's interesting that you found a positive within that and you didn't finish. So,
I think that college is the best way to learn how to solve problems. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter what you do. I told you I use 4 or 5 classes all the time. I took 100 classes or whatever, and I used 4. But I learned to figure out problems. I learned how to communicate. I learned all the things that you need to do. Those are the intangibles that you learn from college, and it's a great experience. And I kind of think that whether it's military or trade school or college, no matter what it is, going another level education-wise after high school will just make you a better problem solver.
I can see that.
I kind of think I feel a little similar to you in the sense in high school. I didn't try in high school. I had straight A's and B's. I didn't try. I would do my homework next period. I never did homework at home. I did it in class, and I'd pass the classes. When I went to college really made me learn how to be more disciplined. It made me realize I have to show up. I have to pay attention. I have to study. It definitely built my work ethic way more than I ever would have learned had not gone to college.
For
I
sure.
think, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go to college. So you want to tell me about your early business ventures?
It can be done anyway.
Yeah, no,
Well, and
yeah.
frankly, lots of people are wired
Yeah.
very well right out of high school or even before that.
No, for
I know tons of successful people that are incredibly disciplined. In fact, tons of insurance adjusters that are incredibly good at what they do, and they don't have any college education. And well, I'm sure we'll talk about it later. What makes a good insurance adjuster? It's being a hustler, and a lot of times the college educated go a little different route. In our industry. So
No, I can totally see that. I mean, I say I didn't go to college because the scope, I thought I was going to go law enforcement this whole time. So at 18, I'm working at a halfway house, and that was my college. That was real world.
Sure.
Like, I'm 18 years old as an intern telling grown-ass men straight out of prison, hey, can you make sure you go wash the floors in the bathroom? And,
Right.
How are you going to handle it when they tell you to fuck off?
Right.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So it taught me people skills and respect really early on. So that is something that I carry with me, every single day is
Sure.
the way those guys, taught respect, But so going back, what were some of your early business ventures? So you're in college. What are you doing now? Well, no, not now, but like right after college.
Sure. Well, I left college again because I didn't think I was going in the direction I wanted to be as an adult. And my girlfriend was so great. And I remembered the last time being happy was in Pueblo.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't happy. And so I was like, and ultimately for me, I'll probably go back to that a lot. I try to stay very, very in touch with happiness and contentment. And I wasn't happy or content in the direction I was going, whether it was a one that would have worked or not. But I knew that I was always happy when we were in Pueblo. And when I moved to Colorado Springs, I wasn't as happy. And when I moved to Boulder, I had fun, but it didn't seem
More
like
short-term gratification.
Yeah. And I didn't feel like I was authentic. When I was in Pueblo, and you'll find with me, I'm real easy in my own skin. I'm very comfortable. Take me as I come. I'm not changing, And in Pueblo, I always felt so comfortable. I never thought about what I was wearing. I never thought about who I was or what status I had. In Colorado Springs, I was taught that you had to have a status, and generalizing Colorado Springs like that isn't fair. But I'm going through high school, and I'm sure it's like that in a lot of places. But I was trying to be something. When I went to college, I was trying to be something, mostly for my parents. When I came to Pueblo, I decided I just want to go be happy and simple. I can go work for a very little amount of money, and I can buy a house in Pueblo. At the time, it was real easy to buy houses. I can have this great girlfriend, and I can have a boat and go fishing, and that's what makes me happy. So I chose that, and I started as working as my friend owned an auto shop, B&F Auto, over on Evans and Bessemer, and they had this office out front that wasn't being used, and I rented it from them, and I'd go to auctions and I'd buy stuff and I'd sell it, and that's how I made a living for like a year and a half. And
So you're buying furniture,
cars.
right?
Cars,
Yeah.
but mostly it was anything of value. I've always kind of had a knack for seeing the value in things. Buying low and selling high is kind of a simple thing, but it works as long as you know what things are worth. And so I buy and sold stuff. I didn't make enough money to really. I wasn't making enough money, and eventually it does come down to that. And so I got a job with a company working with developmentally disabled adults. I worked in a group home for a couple years and absolutely loved it. Mm-hmm. It was the first time I had a real job. I had great supervisors. Had one particular supervisor that taught me something that I'd never been taught, that I still say today. She says, you are allowed to be honest. And not that I was a dishonest person, but I find myself manipulating things at times, or giving people a version of the truth to make sure I never got in trouble and stuff like that. And she taught me that. And so that wasn't really nice. And I loved working with the developmentally disabled adults. They taught me a lot. And then my best friend was just learning to be an insurance adjuster. His dad was an insurance adjuster. My mom worked for them in 1972. And she came to Colorado, and her first job was at McMillian Claim Service, working for my friend's dad. And he was training to be an adjuster, and he says, you got to try this.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll try it.
Now, I know we talked a little bit before this, and I was confused, so I guarantee you other people are going to be confused. Can you give us the rundown? What's the difference between an insurance adjuster and an insurance agent, I'm assuming?
Yeah. That's a great question. I was excited to answer that question because...
Yeah, I'm very curious. I didn't know until today.
Yeah. And nobody does. And so everybody, and I take it for granted, but I get this question just a tremendous amount of times. Insurance agents sell an insurance policy. Okay, everybody buys insurance policies for their business, for their home, for their car, for liability purposes in case they do something wrong and they're liable for it. I don't have anything to do with that. I can tell you some really great people around town that do sell insurance, but I can't tell you why they're. I really don't know anything about that. What insurance adjusters do is when something happens that's covered by your insurance, we figure out what the value of that happening is. So if you get in a car accident, we figure out what the car is worth. If it hails on your roof, we figure out what your roof's value is. If your house burns down, we can figure out the value it takes to rebuild your house. And frankly, this whole building could have a tornado hit it, and at this point in my career, I could figure out what the value is to rebuild the building, including, as much as figuring out how much the owner of the building lost in rents and such. So it's kind of encapsulating anything that is covered by insurance. When something happens that's covered by insurance, somebody has to figure out what the value of that is, and that's what insurance adjusters do. So we own an insurance adjusting company that handles insurance claims.
Interesting.
Yeah, somebody puts in an insurance claim because something happened, we go figure out the value of it.
So you still are good at finding the value in things.
A little bit, yeah.
It all started kind of with the auction thing, and it's a very continuous
And something that's probably important to add to that is that there's two different kinds of insurance adjusters. Mm-hmm. There's a company adjuster, which works directly for State Farm or American Family or Farmers Alliance, okay? And then there's an independent adjuster. Independent adjusters are contractors that work for these companies, okay? And earlier I talked about, getting a college education. To work for a company as an insurance adjuster, you have to have a college education. You have to have a 4-year degree in most cases. There's exceptions to that, of course, but most of the companies require that you have a 4-year degree. Ironically, they don't really care what your degree is in most of the time. They just want to know that you have the degree. Being an independent, you don't have to have a degree. You have to get your foot in the door, and getting your foot in the door is crazy. You get certified by taking some tests that I think almost anybody could learn if you have any construction background, or even if you just, if you studied a little bit, lots and lots and lots of people can figure out how to become certified as an insurance adjuster and get licensed. And while we don't license in the state of Colorado, Texas licenses people, and you almost always have to have a Texas license to go out on the road and work catastrophes, and that's how most people start. They go out and work big catastrophes like hurricanes and giant hailstorms in metropolitan areas, etc. So that's what we did in 1997 when we started training, and in 1998 we got sent to a hurricane in Pascagoula, Mississippi.
That sounds like a great time. Yeah. Shout out Mississippi.
In 98, huh? So 22 years.
Yeah,
24
like
years.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do public math.
I was 4 years old when you were following hurricanes.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Make me feel awesome. Nice and young. I appreciate you guys.
I'm older, so.
Okay. All right.
So that's so you go to Mississippi and you're getting your feet wet. You're finding value in lost, essentially, right? Lost structures. You're finding the value in it.
Sure.
So how does that transform to where you're at today?
The way it works is when you're an independent adjuster, and anybody listening that is interested, I tell people about being an independent adjuster all the time because it's a great job. But it's amazing that if you tell 50 people about it, as easy it is to get your foot in the door, it just doesn't work for people because it takes a unique personality. I said earlier that the college educated tend to go the route of the big company. Well, it seems like the people that are successful as independents are kind of like people that are willing to really hustle, like hardworking, very hardworking, figure it out, do what you have to do. You're never going to get like a lot of support or help. They just throw you in. When I went and worked my first term in Mississippi, they gave us 80 claims and said, here, do these. And there's 2 trainers over there that can help you if you need some help, but we didn't really know. And
couldn't Google it.
No. And no, you couldn't Google it. Yeah. I never thought about that.
Well, no, there was a hurricane. I think the Wi-Fi was out.
Yeah.
The Walmart dial-up was definitely not working.
Well, and so anyway, it attracts a persons that hustle, that work hard and figure it out. And that's kind of who I am, and that's kind of who my wife is too. She was a nurse's aide at the time, and we went and worked together as a team. We took only I would take claims, but we do them as a team, and it was great. It was fantastic. We just we worked really well together, and we actually had a conversion van with an office set up in it, and she'd sit in there and type up the claims while I was up on the roofs inspecting. And
that's cool.
Two-way
van
radios.
life and
van
life, and before it was cool.
Yeah, before it was cool. Yeah, and then I'd call in on a two-way radio what needed to be in the estimate. She'd write the estimate. By the time I'd come down, she'd have it all written, and we'd, you have to take photographs. We'd label the photos and write up a quick little report. And by the time we left the house, many times we were writing them a check and giving them an estimate that we'd printed out in the van. It was a real tight little unit. We did good. We were always good at what we did. Worked real hard, and then we'd been doing it for like 6 years, and they wanted me to be a supervisor and my wife to be a trainer. And they ran that by us before, and we'd never done it. And really in that industry, you don't necessarily make more money being in management. And so that was kind of weird. But we decided to give it a try when Katrina hit. I think most everybody remembers Hurricane Katrina. Mm-hmm. Well, it was a huge thing. We were already working a hurricane when it hit. And all of a sudden we saw it coming, and everybody kind of knew this was going to be next level kind of thing. And they told us that they needed us to be a manager and a trainer more than they needed us to be adjusters. And I'd worked for the same company for a long time and wanted to do good by them. So anyway, we did it. We went and we went into management. That was 2005, I think. And I actually, at that point, before the storm even hit, I had done a lot of flood work, and flood claims are harder than regular claims. It's a government policy. The government owns the policy. Instead of State Farm owning the policy, the government owns the policy.
So for all flood insurance,
for all flood insurance, National Flood Insurance Program is government-owned policy that is funded by and overseen by the U.S. government. Well, because of that, of course, there's a lot more rules and regulations.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And the way it worked at the time, and it's different now, but at the time, State Farm sold and serviced the policy. So they'd sell you the policy, and then when a claim hit, they'd service the policy. But then they'd turn in the finished claim to the government, and the government would audit it. And if you didn't do something right or you paid for something wrong, they'd only give you what it should have been paid. So they were very careful to do things very, very accurate. So the problem was people weren't making a lot of money doing flood. They were making tons of money doing wind and hail and water, but they weren't making any money doing flood. And it was because of the process. So I developed a class that taught people how to do flood claims and make money, because they were doing them wrong, and too much to explain. But I had about a week and a half between leaving the one storm and Katrina was on its way, and I didn't have anything to do, so I decided I was going to create this class so we could get people making more money doing flood claims, and that's what I did. And I ended up giving it to like 700 people, and I was giving it to all the insurance adjusters that were on the staff too, like the State Farm adjusters and their trainers and the managers. They all went through my class, and that's what really ultimately made my employer love me. All of a sudden they wanted me to be in upper management, and they were grooming me, and that really was like a catapult for my career. The only problem was my wife was getting tired of being on the road. We'd been on the road for almost 10 years. And she wanted to have a child. I wanted to have a child, and we didn't want to do it on the road. A lot of people do, but it just wasn't for us. And so right about the time I was about to get the big job, and I got a big offer from the National Flood Insurance Program too, right at the same time. That was really crazy.
That's extremely crazy.
Yeah, that was a huge offer. When it blindsided me, because I had no idea. I was so naive, and all of a sudden this guy calls me, and he says, "Jason, we need to talk about you working for the National Flood Insurance Program." And I was the liaison between our company and them, and so they hit me with this job offer that's like way, way more money than I ever thought I'd be making, and like benefits and cars, and it was just amazing. But I had to live in Washington, D.C. And I was like, I just can't. And so anyway, wife was ready to be off the road, and so we came home. Our friend owned McMillian Claim Service right here in Pueblo. He was in the Union Depot. That's where his office was. Coolest office ever. I'm a small town guy. That's still the coolest office ever. And so his name was Dennis Franson, and Dennis owned the McMillian in Pueblo, and there were 9 owners, I believe, throughout the state: Pueblo, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, Durango, Montrose, Glenwood Springs, Grand Junction, Fort Collins. That
sounds like 9.
A little bit of everywhere.
Anyway, and Dennis was about ready to retire. And I had done a few claims for him when I was not working as a catastrophe adjuster. And so I kind of knew how he did things and stuff, and we figured out a deal, and I bought the office in Pueblo in 2007. And a giant hailstorm hit 2 days later. Like a huge hailstorm in Pueblo hit like 2 days later. And so we started. Yeah, wow, it was crazy. And that was like my bread and butter at the time. That's what I was best at. And so we were like, wow, what a great way to
fire up the van, honey. We're hitting the road.
Yeah. Except she was running the office, so I didn't have my partner at that point. It was terrible. I hated working alone in the beginning.
Yeah. No, that's definitely I can only imagine, like, grocery shopping when you grocery shop with another person versus when you go by yourself. It's definitely a team sport. So if you're used to that,
that training that you built, that's pretty crazy. That was in 2005 ish. You said, right? I mean, that's like 15 years ahead of its time, really. I mean, because on Instagram and social and YouTube, people are spending so much money on these trainings from these PDFs, professionals and downloads, and going to these weekend seminars to learn. And so it's very cool to hear that you did something like that, and it really was way ahead of its time, I feel like, because you could probably make a training like that and sell it for like $1,500 a license or something right
But
now.
since you
or
were
more.
working under somebody, you just gave it away?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Now
I'm assuming.
that's an interesting. We gave it away for sure. But when I made this, it was totally unprompted. Nobody told me to do this. I had some time, and I knew that people were failing at doing this, and so I decided to do it. So I made this whole thing. I made this booklet and this whole guide, a checklist of how to do things that summarized the booklet and stuff. And so when the storm hit, you got to realize when a catastrophe happens, they rent any old building. This happened to be an old Kmart that was abandoned in New Orleans, the suburb of New Orleans.
That was ahead of its time too.
Yeah, for sure. And so I happened to know one of the big bosses at State Farm that was a catastrophe coordinator. I'd worked with him in the past and knew him real well, and he and I got along real well. And I'm like, hey man, listen, I developed a flood program, and everybody is failing at flood, or they're not making that much money. And I want to be able to give this class, but I need a place to give this class to all the Eberls adjusters. Eberls was the company I was working for at the time. And he's like, okay, let me see what I can do. And so he comes to me like, Jason, I found a spot for you. He takes me back in the corner of this Kmart, and he puts me in this little dungeon room that's concrete block, and there's like a 2x4 across the middle of it that can't be moved. So you have to duck underneath it to get from the seats over to where I would be presenting and stuff. It's just the funniest thing. But we could put 20 chairs in there. And so I started giving it to 20 adjusters at a time after the storm started going. And I was trying to get, it took about 3 hours for the class. And I'm like, I got to get as many people through this as possible, because you have to start properly to make it work. And so I'm starting to give it, and pretty soon, I'm giving 6-7 classes a day, because we're working outrageous hours, and maybe it was only 4 or 5 classes a day or whatever. But I mean, it's unbelievable how many people were going through there. And pretty soon, the same guy that gave me the room to work in, he's like, hey, do you mind if our trainers go to the class, all of the State Farm trainers? And I says, no, bring them in. And then later on, he's like, some of the supervisors are interested in seeing this too, right? And so they're coming in, and Eberls didn't charge anything. We didn't charge anything. Eberls trains all their adjusters, and this was just another type of training. But Eberls valued how good it looked that we were doing something that nobody else was doing. And State Farm loved what was going on in that back room, because it was giving people a way to organize their work to where they just, it's a totally different approach, and it just makes life a whole lot easier, a lot less stress. And it's really great for insureds, because the long and short of it is flood claims are huge. You've got 2 or 3 feet of water in an entire house, and they're devastating. People's lives are just devastated. It's terrible. And the insurance policy is terrible. The coverages are awful. And to go do a giant claim like that would take you hours, but you don't have hours. And you might have 50 of these claims or 40 of these claims. Well, if you call these people and say, I'm going to be out there in, a week and a half, or I'm going to be out there in 15 days. Like, what do you mean you're going to be out there in 15 days? Are you kidding me? But each one takes 5 or 6 hours. How you can't get that done. So what I did is I encouraged people to only give each person 1 hour. Okay, and then you could do 7 or 8 in one day at least. Okay, but in that hour you did a certain amount of things to get the ball rolling, and then you would schedule them out. That while you're there, you'd give them another appointment. So everybody always had something to do, and they'd already seen you. I mean, we'd see 40 or 50 claims in the first week, whereas everybody else was struggling just to get out, but it was so easy to do that, that it got the ball rolling. And anyway, that's what I was teaching in this back corner. So anyway, then
essentially you were teaching to get in, get the ball rolling, and find a spot to stop, that you could comfortably manage more and at least get the ball rolling, and then do follow-ups.
Yeah. So
genius.
I mean, when your
really
house
smart.
is in 2 feet of water, The quicker you can see someone, the quicker it feels like something's happening.
Something, yeah.
A lot better.
And they're not calling you. That's one thing you don't want is people calling you. If you have 40 people that are trying to call you because they don't know what's going on and you haven't, but when you go there, if you give them something to do, they have to take care of their contents list. They have to get a contractor. They have to do a handful of things, and you give them a flyer that says, here's what you can do. Now they have something to do. They have an appointment, and you tell them that's your deadline. When I come back here, I need you to have that done. And now they have something to do, so they're not calling you. Yeah, that's kind of the best part of it is they're not calling you.
That's you're even running a diversion to the client. That's genius.
Yeah. So anyway,
time management.
It would have been great though to have the internet, and we could have just given that class like 500 people.
One Zoom call, charge them $500 to get in.
You could have made millions.
You could have put your feet up.
Yeah, I failed.
No, that's insane. I mean, different times, honestly. Sure. 2007, you're here in Pueblo again. You know, you're running the office at the Union Depot.
Yep.
Fast forward a little bit. What is that looking like? Because I was just at the office. There's not one at the Union Depot, right?
No, there's not one at the Union Depot. We decided to buy an office. One of the things that I started buying real estate early. It was a tiny little house when we moved to Pueblo. I left that out when we moved to Pueblo. We bought a place. We saved a couple $1,000s and bought this tiny little house, and
now it's worth $500,000.
Well, it's the house next door to Frank's Meat Market.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah.
Little tiny house right next door to Frank's Meat Market. Love that place.
In the county, right?
Should have never sold it. Of course. Never sell. Never sell anything. Always just buy more. But no, so I always my mom's in real estate, and she is an accountant as well. She owns a real estate company here in town, and she's kind of retired now, but she still does a lot. And so Mom was always telling me buy. So I bought the house, and we're renting at the Union Depot. Loved it. And she's just like, you're spending too much money every month and you're not making anything with that money. Go buy an office. And so we bought an office that's over on Elizabeth at 1015 North Elizabeth. That's also not where you visited me.
That's still not where I visited you. Do you still have that office?
Yeah. It was just a little bit, the area was a little bit rough to have customers, particularly insurance companies, when they come from out of state to visit now and then. It was a little different. It was a little rough. We were right next to a few halfway houses, and then we were next to an apartment complex for people that had pretty severe mental issues, and they'd walk around all day, and it was just, it wasn't quite the image that we needed. And I missed being downtown. Mm-hmm. Man, I did. And so we made it a rental, and we make enough money on the rental to pay for our office downtown. Now we moved back downtown, and I just love being downtown. I love being downtown. Pueblo's fun.
Me and Brad talk about that all the time.
I like being down here a lot too. Yeah, I was in the Thatcher building for 4 years, and then I moved here, and I like it here more because I'm even closer. A little more downtown, 5 blocks away. But
I just love it. I love it. I used to love, and when we bought McMillian, I remember feeling kind of important, walking into the Union Depot next to the DA's office. And this big, gorgeous building that had all this beautiful woodwork and metalwork, and it felt important, and I took it serious, and I wanted it to be something good, something cool, and something that I could put my fingerprint on and be proud of. And I think that's one of the things that being over on Elizabeth was a little bit.
Counterproductive.
It was a little counter. Yeah, it didn't feel up to what we were trying to do. It felt a little too small. And so we moved back downtown.
Nice.
And along the way, we bought the Colorado Springs office and the Fort Collins office and the Greeley office. Fort Collins and Greeley had joined into one. And
I think that's around the time I think we met, because you were just bought another office.
No, that was like 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, we right away started buying up other offices because people we came in and we were young. We were relatively young. I mean, I don't know, how old was I in 2007, but
I was in 7th grade for reference.
Live math guy.
I don't know how old you are now. Hurry.
So anyway, no, but relatively speaking, we were very young, and most of the other owners were in their 60s.
Sounds like Brad's situation.
And so I bought Colorado Springs. The guy, he'd run that down pretty bad. He'd run that. It was not doing well. The Fort Collins one was doing fine, but the guy was like 70 years old, and he was ready to sell. And then in 2018, I think, the guy that owned Durango and Montrose was just ready to retire. He became a bus driver. This job is very stressful, and it'll work.
Summer's off,
Yeah. And I look forward to the day that I can either just be an adjuster or, do a kind of something mindless that I don't have to have too much pressure on me. But I'll probably still just do insurance claims because that's what I've been good at all the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then in March, we bought the Glenwood Springs and Grand Junction offices, and it unified McMillian Claim Service into one company for the most part, and now we have coverage over the whole state, and we're trying to get into northern New Mexico right now.
No, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so it was that in March, those offices you acquired when we first met. No, that's super awesome to see that you guys are still looking to grow and, kind of have that forward momentum still to always be better and, like I said, looking to expand outside of the state and stuff like that. That's absolutely huge.
So you have quite a bit of employees then, yeah?
Well, not a huge amount. I mean, we have about 10 employees throughout the state, which isn't a whole lot, maybe 11. And then a couple part-time people that just do overflow work. So we don't have a ton of employees, but they're all very good jobs. Everybody that works for us makes a very good living. It's a hard job, so it's not they're not being given anything. They are earning that salary, but it's a good one. And so it's nice to provide those good quality jobs. I wish there could be a little bit more. I'd love to employ 25 or 30 people in Pueblo, but I don't think that's realistic given the market.
No, for sure.
Agreed.
So, I mean, with all the growth that you have, before the podcast, we were talking about growth. Did you want to touch on that? Because I felt like that was good.
Yeah, and it's something that I told David. David came to take pictures of me, and he managed to make me look really okay.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Really okay is like
crazy.
our ceiling, right?
Yeah,
and,
I always look like a rapper or something instead of an accountant when he takes my pictures.
He took a silly one of me. I think it kind of captured me a little bit better than the one that's going to end up on the website. But
it was on his Facebook display picture immediately.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, it's silly. I'm a pretty silly person. But when he was there, and I'm 50 years old, and I love young people. I love for young people to try to succeed and try to have businesses. But it's hard, and I think that the small business, you're married to it 100%. It's just you never stop working. You're never not answering the phone. It's just all you. And having been through so much with our company, and my mom owning her company and my dad owned a construction company, having been through all that, I always am telling young people, and David's pretty mature, but he's pretty young too. Yeah. But I'm always telling young people, do what you can to not stay small, if you can. It's really hard. Staying small, you have an absolute ceiling because there's only so many hours in the day. And when you're doing a trade or an art, it's really hard because you're not necessarily able to just hire a bunch of people and they do things as well as you. One of my close friends in years past was a painter. He was a phenomenal painter. I mean, he just painted houses, painted inside and out. He did unbelievable work, and he was in very, very high demand. He could charge pretty much whatever he wanted because the people that wanted him, they wanted him because he was that good, But he was working an unbelievable amount of hours and time, and there was a ceiling on what he could make, even if he was charging more. And it was never going to be, the kind of money that I would say would make you comfortable or relaxed. I think there's a point where you make enough money to where you can, the pressure of money monthly relaxes. You still have to be careful and you can't overspend and stuff, but that pressure just settles down when you get over like a certain number. And each person kind of has a different number because their expectations. I don't live in a real expensive house. I don't drive real expensive cars, but I'm very happy right there. If you're not happy there, then you need to work for a bigger salary. But that ceiling that's there when you're a small business owner, the only way it grows is if you get other people to make money for you. And it's finding other people to work for you in something is something that, as a small business, if you have that desire for more income, that's really a whole lot easier than trying to squeeze more out of something that is already stretched thin. Because as a business owner, you're stretched thin. I don't care what you're doing, you're stretched thin.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I really encourage people, and I tell David that, and David says, well, it's hard. You're an artist. You're a good artist. You can't teach anybody to do that. And if you do, all of a sudden they might just go be their own artist.
That's the tough part.
Yeah, that's really hard. I don't know if I have an answer for that. But I would say I would explore all options, because when we grew, with each time we grew, for a while it was more and more work, right? But I was doing a lot of the work. And we'd hire employees, but I still had to do a lot. And then when we got 5 offices, all of a sudden that was a little more work than I could do. I couldn't be out doing a bunch of claims and manage everything that was going on at the same time. So I stepped back from doing claims and only took them when we got a real big rush. And even then, I didn't like it. I didn't like being focused on 2 different things at all. I either want to manage or I want to do claims. I didn't want to be in between. But as we got bigger, that feeling of relaxing happened, because the money part, if one of our offices only made 10 grand one year, it doesn't matter. Just put it with the rest. It's still a profit. And when you can have a bunch of people trying to make you more successful, it's a whole lot easier than putting all of it on your own back. And you can provide great jobs along the way. Like I said, the people that work for us, they make a great living, and they seem to be happy and like working for us.
I was gonna say, I think that's kind of like the transition between being self-employed versus a business owner. A lot of people are self-employed, but when you start to grow and get past that small, that's when you become a business owner, I think. And it is a struggle. Yeah. But it's necessary if you do want to get past where you're at.
Yeah. And you know what? For me, it wasn't making more money. I was pretty content, and we made enough to where I was content. And but I did like more time. And now I'm at the point in my life where I'm trying to buy time, not more money. I don't need to make a single dollar more for the rest of my life annually, but I do want more free time. That's what I want, and that's what I'm getting. And that's kind of how I run my business, is to make sure. In fact, I got a big corporation tried to buy us 5 years ago or so, 5 years ago, and part of the buyout, it was a great offer, and part of the buyout was I had to do a 3-year contract where I was working for them. Well, at the time we had 5 offices, and I was only working like 25 or 30 hours a week managing the offices. It was great. It was the least stress I'd have after all these years. I finally didn't have very much stress. And ultimately, I couldn't consider taking their offer because they were going to put me in a position of working 50, 60-hour weeks again. And I'd done that for 15, 20 years. I was over that. I'm ready to take it just a little down a little bit. It's nice when you kind of get past needing more money and needing more time. I feel lucky to be in that position.
So what do you think was the hardest part making that transition, like to continue to growing? Do you think it was the finance of buying more offices, or the what part do you think?
The hard part is, first of all, having the guts to do it. Okay, and I'm not bragging, but it's scary, and you got to at one point make sure that you do the math and make sure you can do it and be realistic. And the second part, I think, is having a solid plan that accounts for anything that might happen. That's super important. But it's scary. It's really hard to get to put your neck out and keep expanding. I don't know.
I feel like that's most things with, owning your own business or being self-employed, is having enough guts to do anything.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of people I know who kill it in side work, but they just can't make that jump out of the 9 to 5. Yeah. And I can truly say making that jump was the best thing I ever did. Yeah. Like for overall happiness, health, well-being, monetarily, like it is the best decision I ever made. But it took, months and months of worrying, like, what if it's a slow month? What if it's, crazy? But you always think of the negative and you never think of the positive of what if this works?
Yeah.
And it, for all three of us, it's worked, So, I mean, yours definitely works, Brad's definitely works. And so far mine's going there. I'll let you know in 5 years if it worked, but,
Sure.
But yeah, it's just having that enough courage and, being diligent with money is one thing for sure. Delegating money. What's important is that $800 a month car payment worth it? Probably not. Obviously, you can put that money into something else, reduce that car payment down to $200 or pay cash. But I think finding the guts and having a solid team around you is absolutely paramount.
Yeah. And I can't discount. I'm talking about what I don't know if I've said we as much as I've said I. In so far, but my wife is an unbelievable force when it comes to work ethic. She is just a force.
Absolutely.
And she takes on a lot, and she's good at the things I'm not so good at. So having a good we've worked together for 24 years, and we haven't killed each other. And it's a miracle because it's hard. It really, really takes a lot, to be able to not. And separate it when you're fighting. Separate. You still have to. Business has to be done.
Yeah. Her office is still right there.
Yeah. It's tough. But no. And the other thing too is, and you touched on it earlier. One of you touched on it earlier. There's a difference between being good at running a business and good at a trade. And if you decide you want to go further, you really have to step away and let control go. I'm not telling you I was the best insurance adjuster of all time, but I did real good work, and I was very responsible. And communication in my industry and being responsible for what you do is huge. That people don't need to be calling you wondering where you are. Why haven't you called? You don't ever want to hear the phone ring. Mm-hmm. If you're doing a good job, the phone hardly rings because everybody knows what's going on. And I was good at that. Well, when I started hiring people to do claims for me, sometimes they weren't as good at it. Sometimes they weren't as good at it at all. Sometimes they were terrible at it. I'd sit there and interview people, and I'd tell people the most important thing you can do in this industry is answer the damn phone. If you can't answer it, when you can, speak to somebody, go get your message and call your people back. Mm-hmm. That is like the foundation of everything, man. And you can't always get people to do that. So being an employer is a lot different because they're never going to live up to your standards. They're just not. I can assure you, even the best. Now I say that. I shouldn't say that because I have a few people that work for me that are just phenomenal at what they do. They're better adjusters than I ever was, and that's the truth. Mm-hmm. But I do think that I'm pretty good at being an employer. I treat people good, and I try to pay them more than the industry standard. I try to give them bonuses where I can, and when they get compliments, I'll give them bonuses on stuff. And I try to be a good human when it comes to employing people. But it goes back to, if you ever are going to expand, you have to let loose of the control. You could never get somebody to take pictures the way you take pictures, no matter how much you train them. And they might not take pride in some portion of the job that you think is so important. Mm-hmm. So I have to let go of that control and say what my job is now is to make sure that I'm doing it good enough to where all these insurance companies are going to keep sending us work. Yep. And when something goes wrong, I'm the face. I'm the person that fixes it. So all these companies know that, and that's where I can excel as a business owner. And also, conversely, making sure they're happy. When I interview a person, or when I interview a person, I always tell them, my goal as an employer is for you to love working for McMillian Claim Service. Our industry is ran by a lot of people that I feel are worried about money and nothing else, and they treat people terribly. And I've always tried to be better than that. And so I always tell folks that I want you to be alone at dinner with your friends saying, I just love working for McMillian. It's a fantastic company. They treat us as good as they can. They make us feel valuable. Okay. And so I take a lot of pride in that particular thing. And that's one of the things that I think makes us good at being business owners, not being adjusters.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Being a business owner.
and giving back to just normal human decency.
Yep.
The common courtesy is not so common.
No, it's not. And I mean it. Our industry is filled with companies that just borderline abuse their employees. I mean, it's hard for me to watch. I'm part of several groups on Facebook and whatnot that where people find jobs and talk about jobs and in the industry, and I hear the offers from some of these companies, and I just think, wow, that's tough. That's barely a living wage for something. The other thing that's crazy is that in 2001 or I think it's 2002, I made more money in 2002 than any other year. To even right now.
Really?
Yeah, because it was a different industry that was easier, and they approached it differently then. But that's complicated conversation. But this, and it's gone steadily backwards, and now I think they just hire just about anybody and try to just take advantage. We try to be a company that's a little bit more high. We try to, our standards are a little bit higher. We try to do a little bit better work. We work for a lot of high-end insurance companies that insure higher end properties and
I think it
commercial.
comes back to that control you have and discipline within yourself, and the respect you have for being a business owner, like Brad and stuff like that. His attention to detail is just crazy. Him and his wife, bookkeeping and doing what they do day to day. I couldn't do it. I'd go insane. I'd fucking throw my computer out the window. But like the attention to detail, and with my clients, I try, do the same thing. Like, all right, this is booked. You do X, Y, and Z. I'll reach out to you on this date. If you don't hear from me, just give me a call, whatever.
Right.
But just communication. That's what it comes down to.
I have a quick question real quick that I kind of want to talk. So basically you're talking about like the transition from working in the business to working on the business. I talk about that a lot, basically.
It's huge.
And so that's something I feel like I'm in that stage where it's like, how many more tax returns can I personally do?
Right.
At that point. So I'm been doing a lot of thinking of that. So I'm kind of curious how you making that transition when you bought the business, the McMillian business in 2007. Did you immediately go, I'm working on the business, not in the business, or was it kind of like a progressive? I work in the business and on the business, and slowly as we grow, I kind of.
Well, I wanted more because I wanted not to work so many hours. Mm-hmm. I was working a lot of hours, and I came off of working a lot of hours for years and years and years. And so I knew that we'd have to do this many claims for me to finally step back and not do them myself. And so I think pretty early on, I was trying to at least get enough work to where I could have a couple employees. So it meant that I never had to do all of them. Right away I had employees, and the old owner didn't. And we're very close with him still. And he takes a lot of pride in me. He didn't ever have kids, and I think he kind of always thought of me as kind of a kid to him. And the conversations are always interesting because so many of these owners, and I don't want to discount them because they're wonderful people and phenomenal adjusters. I mean, really phenomenal adjusters. But they're not necessarily good employers. And it wasn't really in their wheelhouse to say, I'm going to approach this now as I'm good at this industry. I know what this industry is about. I know what I need to do, how to do it. Now I'm going to run a company that is viable, and I'm going to get myself time. I need time. I don't need money. Okay. Well, the old owners, they could make way more money just by working harder, but they did a lot of work, and I mean a lot. The guy that I just bought the 2 offices from in March, I mean, his work ethic is just unbelievable. It's just phenomenal. I'm not that person, and I don't want to say I'm lazy. I'm not. I'm a hard worker, but I also from very early on had a plan to go a direction, and that was to where I didn't have to do it all myself. I didn't think I'd ever get to the point where I didn't do any claims. Mm-hmm. I really didn't. But I definitely thought if I have 3 adjusters working for me, or at least 2, that means when it gets really bad, I don't have to kill myself. And that's what I used to do, In the beginning, it was, when we get a hailstorm and you have 250 claims, there's no sleep. There's no
You got
anything.
the air mattress behind the desk.
Yeah, there's no peace of mind. There's nothing. It's just work, and it's just insane. And I knew I didn't want to do that forever. And I knew that all the other owners did it pretty much on their own, or they'd have one person working with them, and that wasn't enough. I knew that I couldn't do that long term, and I wanted to do it long term. And so, early on, I was trying to get more business, and hire people, and get to where I never had to work 60 hours a week again, because I had done that for a long time.
You done enough hours. Early years to take some off now.
Yeah. Well, you're probably really good at what you do at this point too. And there's an example. Okay, my mom owns an accounting company.
Yeah.
Okay, so it took her a long time to finally hire people, but when she did, it just became easier on her. But she had to get over their mistakes. And it's hard to do that, because they're not going to be as good as you, particularly in the beginning. And, that first couple of years, you hire somebody and they might be a young person, if you spend less, you get a young person, if you spend more, you might not be able to keep it. There's all that goes into it, but ultimately getting people to do some of the work and being willing to be big, you gotta tell yourself, I can't go hire 3 people. Their lives are in my hands. I can't go hire 2 people and give them a good living wage if I'm not going to have enough work for them. You have to have that. And so, I definitely went after more work, and I don't know if I got that much more work. I think I just got more territories. We ultimately, when we buy adjusting companies, you're just buying customers.
Yeah.
You're just buying a bigger book. That's it, So.
No, that makes total sense.
Yeah, there's a website dedicated to like accounting firms for sale and stuff like that. I've kind of looked into it. It's similar, like a lot of accountants are at least around here, 1-man shows, 2-man shows, 60s, 70s, ready to retire. It sounds very similar to the insurance, your story of insurance.
Well, I mean, and again, do you want to stick your neck out or not?
Yeah.
And you want to let people make mistakes, on your behalf with your name on it, because that's what happens. And being that manager is a totally different role than being an accountant. And I guarantee you're pretty anal about your work,
Yeah, my wife is a much better manager than me.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of experience. Right now, my wife she does about half the bookkeeping, something around there, and then we have a remote bookkeeper. But my wife, basically, I call her the office manager, because our remote bookkeeper mostly communicates with my wife, because she's a better manager, I think.
My wife runs a tight ship.
Yeah.
She is the office manager. We just changed her title to something that sounds really cool. I can't even remember it right now, but she is unbelievable. She runs a tight ship. Her expectations of adjusters are also very high.
She's been in the industry.
When they make mistakes, she's far more critical of them than I am. I do better at that portion of managing people. She gets furious, and you can't really get furious. You have to manage people and keep them happy, but
keep them motivated.
And understand that they're going to make mistakes and they have their strengths and weaknesses. But again, that's totally shifting gears from being an accountant or an insurance adjuster to being a business owner and somebody that is able to keep everybody going and keep everybody happy. So.
No, that's huge. So you said you're 50, right?
50.
50.
Yeah.
Scary. Happy late birthday, I'm assuming.
There's
another one coming around. But so 50 years old, you have multiple rentals, striving business, like it's flourishing and doing great. What are some of your goals looking forward? Short, medium, long term, personal business?
I've reached my goals. I don't have lofty goals anymore. I mean, I don't. I'm very content. I also, if you want to walk away from anything like old man advice, work towards being content. Have a place that you're good right there. I don't need more. I don't need different. But know where that is, and then that's where you have to work to. But no, my goals now are to keep things solid. With the new company, I want to make sure that we continue to be as good as they were before we took over. It's real important for me. I want to make sure we don't lose business. And I would like to gain a few customers, but those are all real petty things. Those are, petty's not the right word.
Minute.
Those things are just, of course you want to keep your customers and get a few new ones. But I'm at a place right now where I want to keep everything just like it is right now. We're you know,
keep the cruise control.
Yeah, I don't really need to get. We're going to do northern New Mexico because northern New Mexico is right there, and we have adjusters that can service it. It's just an hour or two from their houses. That makes it real easy. But as far as expanding to other places, probably not happening.
You're not trying to do North Carolina offices.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No, we're not trying to be huge.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy where we're at. My goal is to keep everything right where it's at, and as I make decisions, to make them for time and not money.
That's huge.
I love that.
You know, I tend to try and put quotes underneath my Instagram post. As the youngest person at this table, I feel like I am the best suit for this. But there was one, you keep talking about time and value, and I have to put it on there. We shot this girl's 23rd birthday photos regardless. So I found this quote. It says, the older you get, the more you realize that the things that cost no money hold the most value. Yep. And I feel like you really pounded that in today. So shout out to that Pinterest account that I found that quote for, because he really brought it full circle today. And then, you know, kind of piggybacking off goals, what do you want your lasting legacy to be? Something that carries on. I could tell you don't watch the show. No, I'm just kidding.
It's lasting legacy. I see. I guess I should have probably thought about it. Dave, you should have warned me that.
My bad. That was, I thought you knew. Yeah. We talked about everything else.
My lasting legacy. They're just not business related.
No, and that's fine.
Most aren't.
Yeah, I would say my lasting legacy. I just hope, that I'm good husband and father and friend. I have a lot of really good friends, and but no, I don't really think about stuff like that. I don't know why. Stature has never been anything that I've ever strived for. It'd be cool if like everybody go, man, he was sure content.
Yeah.
Honestly, it sounds silly, but it's not.
It sounds like a compromise, but that is the goal.
Yeah, he sure was content. Now, I have pretty good life. Again, I made it to that place financially to where, and it's not a lot. I can assure you, my wife and I do not make a giant pile of money, but we're comfortable to where the stress of money is not really a major factor in my daily life. We have to be careful and live within our means still. Of
course.
And they're very realistic means. But I drive a used car.
Used Lamborghini.
It's funny because I drive a Lexus. I paid $26,000 for a Lexus. It's just a normal car. $26,000 just gets you kind of a normal car these days.
Yeah.
My wife drives a little crossover. We live on the south side in a house that we love that's just nice and quiet and perfect for us. And those were our goals, and so.
So I take it you travel a lot.
Yeah. Well, we travel a little. I like to travel a lot.
I was going to say, if you live within your means, you travel a lot.
And I want to travel. If you want my goal is to travel a lot. I want to live in a lot of places. That's one of the things. For retirement, I want to rent houses for a month or two at a time all over the world and just live there, not be a tourist. I want to go live and
eat with the locals.
Dig into the culture.
I know we're
one
foodies.
Of the things about and one of the things about being an adjuster that I loved was we'd go live in different parts of the country for 2 or 3 months at a time, and sometimes 5 or 6 months at a time. We just loved Appleton, Wisconsin. We just loved Minneapolis, Minnesota. We didn't like Virginia Beach, Virginia. We did and there's a whole scale all over the place. But we got to go live in those communities for a while and learn about our country, and our country's pretty cool. I walked away thinking that all the little subcultures are really, really cool and worthy of seeing. They're interesting. Sure. Yeah, everybody should try to explore a little bit more.
No, it's super awesome, man. I think we're definitely going to have you on for a second episode where we, talk about finer things like, real estate investing and stuff like that.
Good restaurants.
And great restaurants, yeah. I mean,
Good
I think
travels.
we're all three foodies for sure.
I don't know if I'd even agree to do the real estate thing.
Well, you're coming on, so
it's a terrible. I like positive things. That's a negative subject.
It's great for clickbait.
Clickbait.
Everyone wants to be a real estate mogul.
Well, but don't bring me on and expect the nice, light, happy, content person that you see here.
We'll turn the lights down a little lower.
We're going to turn the hats backwards, and I'm going to get salty.
Well, thank you again for coming on. This has been a good one of my favorite episodes so far. So he's not real big on social media. So, I mean, if you want to follow him, we'll put his Facebook on, but he doesn't really post.
Put his email on. I think you said you wanted or something.
Yeah, more emails.
Whatever.
We'll put his phone number down there. Just give him a call. Tell him how much you love the episode.
Nobody's interested in what I do. I can assure. But I will say this. If anybody's interested in being an insurance adjuster, if any young person out there wants to learn about the industry, I have an office downtown. I will take time to spend with anybody that ever has any kind. If you have construction background, if you've got any interest in it whatsoever, I love talking about it. If you want to travel around the country and try to be an insurance adjuster, I can help you get your foot in the door, and it'll probably spit you right out, but it might not. It might not. It sticks with some people, but it's hard and it's crazy, and I tell people about it all the time. So if anybody ever wants to hit me up, I welcome it.
That sounds like cult vibes. I love it, man. Well, sweet. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been the Lasting Legacy Podcast. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. Good night.